What if this was your last almost? Real talk. How many times have you almost done something just for you and then talked yourself out of it? Another year goes by, same burnout, same autopilot, and same maybe next time. This summer, I'm giving a small group of women one big next time is now at my Reclaim, Release, and Reset retreat. Now I'm only opening a limited number of spots because I want it deep and not crowded. So if you don't want this to be another almost, check out the link in my bio. Use the QR code. Let's talk if this feels aligned. Welcome to Leadership Beyond Burnout. Here we are in season 2. Our mission is to help leaders heal, lead, and succeed. Make sure that you listen to the show for actionable takeaways because we want to make sure that you have things to help you improve your life and your workplace. Today's guest, I'm excited to share with you, is Jennifer Fidder, Dr. Jennifer Fidder. She is a social psychologist, hypnotist, and speaker with a background in the health and wellness field and nearly 2 decades of coaching experience. She teaches others how to use the power of their subconscious mind to experience more happiness, health, and success. Now, let me share a little bit about who's sponsoring us today. We have Leadership and Resilience Consultants who's sponsoring this episode today. And let's get right into it and introduce you to Dr. Fidder. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And you just upgraded me to doctor. I'm just a basic master, but it sounds good. Maybe I should go for it. I like how it sounds.
Well, my apologies. Every time I forget sometimes that with a social psychologist that you can be a social psychologist with a master's. So
totally.
we definitely want to get into that explanation of what a social psychologist is. Because I don't think a lot of people are familiar with that designation and how that differs either from a sociologist or a psychologist as well. Mm-hmm. Can you, let's begin just kind of sharing with us how you bring healing to the world.
Ooh, that's a loaded question right from the start.
Right, and however you want to answer it, it's great.
So I started my career actually in the fitness field. So I was a personal fitness trainer for a long time. So it was always more health related, physical health, but I always had like kind of the mindset component in it. And then a few years ago, I started transitioning a little bit out of the fitness field and even more into the mindset field. I became a certified hypnotist. I became an NLP practitioner. And what I do mostly now is just, like you said, help people understand how their subconscious mind works so that they can kind of make it work for them instead of against them, because most of the time we're standing in our own way. And I want to help people to really understand what's going on behind the curtain, if you will. Okay,
that's a great explanation. I love that. Can you share with us, like I asked previously, the difference between a social psychologist and a clinical psychologist?
It depends. So I studied back in Germany. Like all my education is from Germany. I have a bachelor's in social psychology and a master's in educational science. And in Germany, it depends a little bit on where you study, what actually is entailed in this social psychology designation. So
Okay.
a clinical psychologist is really more like your typical psychologist that you would know when you go to a psychotherapist. They usually studied clinical psychology or counseling or something like that. Social psychology is more geared, I like to say, towards the psyche of society. So why are we as a society acting the way we are? Like what shapes our behaviors? Why is the world the way it is? And what do we humans have to do with it? And how do we act in it? Right? So what I
Okay.
did is, since I was always, like I said, also interested in like clinical psychology, I did a lot of elective classes in clinical psychology and related fields. So I kind of have the combination of both, if you will.
Okay. Outstanding. So if I were to ask you about the level of stress that leaders and people in general are feeling right now socially in uh, what are you still in Germany? You're not still in Germany,
No,
correct?
no, I'm currently in Florida. I
Okay,
go a lot back and forth because I travel a lot for work, but right now physically located in Florida.
outstanding. So, what do you see when you're wearing that social psychologist hat?
Mhm.
What commentary would you have on the social environment and how that's impacting us as individuals here in the States?
I was going to say, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the States? That's a totally different climate than anywhere else in the world right now, right?
Absolutely.
And I think there is a lot of, do we want to call it political unrest, maybe? So
That's a good
it's
word.
just, it's a very divided country from what I see right now.
Right.
And it's a lot of insecurity. Like we've seen a lot of layoffs in the government field. We have seen a lot of grants going away. So there's a lot of
Mm,
stress related in that field or around that field. And of course, that spreads out then throughout society. And when we then take into account that the news usually don't help because they always tend to focus on everything that's not going well anyway, right? And that
right.
just increases the whole level of stress in general for everybody, I think.
Right. So so given that climate,
Mhm.
I'm not sure where I want to go to ask you these questions. Uh, so with the current mental health crises, so to speak,
Mhm.
with this heightened stress
Yeah.
and political unrest, and you add on top of that high stress professions,
Mhm.
how can leaders effectively, create a culture of care and support while still trying to drive performance?
Yeah. I think we always have to go back to the basics. What we tend to do as people, as humans, is we always try to control everything outside of ourselves. And that's
Ooh,
just not a thing, right? That just doesn't work. We tried it for years and years and years. You did it, I do it, but it just doesn't work. So we have to go back to the basics and say, okay, what is it that I personally can control? If I'm a leader,
mm,
how can I control my team? How can I support them better? When I'm an employee or when I'm an entrepreneur, what is in my control? Especially with everything, the more chaotic the world is, the more
mm,
I have to look within and say, okay, what is actually still under my control? And how can I do that? And the most important part is what is always under our control is how we react to situations. Do I
absolutely.
take on this stress? Because I always like to see stress as like a kind of a tornado thing that's going on, right? And we all want to be in it for whatever reason. And we're grabbing and holding on to everything. It's like, no, this is not your tornado, right? You can just watch it from the comfort of your own home. You can close the door, look out the window, and let it pass by because there's nothing you can do about it anyway.
Ah,
Focus on the things that you can control, which are your emotions and your reactions to what is going on inside.
right. And what is so interesting is what I noticed, especially for me, and I'm sure for some others, that if I'm not careful and watching how I'm reacting to things and to people, that I can be sucked in to somebody
Yeah.
else's stress. I
Drama.
have this, and and I think others, like when they are feeling so distressed, they want to pull people in as well, just to, I don't know, get a sense of calm, or like they're not alone in this, and you should be just as stressed and upset as I am.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's a very important thing to realize as leaders. Your employees or the people that you work with, your team, they react to your emotional state. If you are a calm leader, if you are a controlled leader, even in the greatest chaos, your team will still be able to perform. People always ask, like, what can leaders do to, help the team to be better, to be more focused? Start with yourself. Take an honest look at yourself, and what kind of leader am I? Am I a focused leader? Do I have it all under control? Or at least do I pretend to have it all under control and let it not show, right?
Right,
And that has a big, big influence on the team as well.
right. How do you believe like their subconscious can dictate or drive some of that, whether it's calm or the strategies they employ with themselves and teams?
That has a lot to do with how we grew up and what mechanisms we developed over the years. So when you see basically the first few years of our lives, everything happens on a subconscious level. There is no real consciousness yet that we're utilizing, meaning everything we see, everything we hear, everything people teach us, we just absorb. And that's how we build we like to call it a hypnosis map of reality.
Mhm.
Basically an idea of how the world works. What is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, how should people react, how should I behave? And that is also where all those habits and coping mechanisms come from. So if I learned during childhood from my parents, from my peers, whoever it was, when a stressful situation arises, we freak out. That is the best
Mhm.
course of action. So that is
Right.
what I will be doing if I'm not
Oh.
consciously working on it, right? If I don't do a lot of self work and self reflection, that is usually what I will carry into my work, into my leadership, into my personal life.
Mm. I
So,
love
so
that.
it's all about becoming self aware of the unconscious or subconscious programming that is actually going on. And that is always the first step. Once you are aware of that, then you know what to tackle and what to work on. But most people are simply not aware. They're just acting the way they're acting because they've always done it that way.
Right. And a lot of times that dysregulation is often put off on teams, and they're made to feel that
Yeah,
external stress. So
yeah.
what are some strategies that can be employed to balance compassion and accountability for teams without just trying to stress them out about it? Because I think sometimes it's like, okay, I've really got to help them understand the importance of this, so I'm going to
Yeah.
stress them to the highest level.
I think there's different approaches to that. One is that, or what I see in my work is sometimes leaders don't give their team enough credit. They always want to micromanage, and
Oh,
I have the idea of like if I'm not on top of them, nothing's going to happen. Well,
right.
you trained those people, didn't you? So
Ooh,
they should know what they're doing. So if you just give them a little bit of leeway and a little bit of autonomy and say, you know what, I trained you, you have the handbook, you know exactly what to do, I trust you, then you might be surprised of what they actually show up with. So if we're just putting a little bit more trust in our teams and in our employees. And the other one is sometimes, especially in stressful situations, if we just put a pause, because we tend to, and that is not just in the work environment but in general, when stressful situations arise, we have the tendency of just to react right away, right?
absolutely.
And if we're able to just put a pause between it and say, okay, listen, this is what's going on right now, this is what I need from my team, how can I communicate that in a way to them that makes them feel important, makes them heard, but also communicates to them, hey, this is something we really have to focus on right now. And I think if you just put that pause in there, it gives you enough time to kind of organize your thoughts, and then you know how to approach it, because you are a leader for a reason. So you have all the resources within you and the knowledge that you need. You just need to be able to access that. And if we just react without thinking, that knowledge is often blocked off.
Right. So you have to really be aware of how stress manifests in you and what does burnout look in you, so that
Yeah.
you can have that awareness of what's going on, consciously and subconsciously. So I'm curious, as a social psychologist and hypnotist, you've seen probably firsthand the impact of stress and burnout.
Yes.
What So what are some of the unconventional methods or mindset shifts that leaders can use to prevent burnout in themselves and in their teams?
I think we kind of have to differentiate between the different kinds of stressors. There's good stress, if you will, quote unquote,
Yes.
or bad
Use
stress,
stress.
right? So if stress in itself, just like anxiety, is nothing bad, it's the opposite. When you have, let's say you have an important launch coming up, or you have an important product, whatever, something's going on in the team, right? That you really need to. Stress is a physical reaction of your body that allows you to really focus your attention on one thing. So that's a good thing, right? If something really important is going on, you need to be able to focus. And that stress response gives you that physical ability to really lock in on the problem or whatever it is that you have in front of you. So sometimes that simple mindset shift of not seeing stress as the enemy, but as the indicator of, okay, this is important. This is something that we now can focus on. So see it as an ally. That can help. And then you have on the other side, chronic stress. Right? And chronic stress is something that just drags over years and years and years until it gets to a point where you're like, okay, this is it. And your body's like, I'm out.
I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. And that is that. And there are different, that has for me also, sure, reframing the mindset, right? But it also has a lot to do with habits, especially when we're looking at leadership level. How are you delegating? Are you actually delegating? Because you should be. You shouldn't be doing everything yourself. But that's where like this perfectionism for a lot of leaders kicks in. And if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done right. So I have to do everything myself. And that comes back to, hey, but you trained your staff, you trained your team, so they know what they're doing. Just trust a little bit more. So it has a lot to do with different habits, stress in general.
And you've mentioned that twice about, training the team and trust them. And what I've been seeing a lot lately, because of so many shifts and layoffs and in some cases mass firings, that when they bring new people in, there hasn't been time to do the training because everything has just gone to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, and people are learning while they're flying the plane. It's like, okay, we're building it and we're flying at the same time. And I could see that being a real challenge if that training hasn't been there. Is there something you would suggest at that point of how to develop trust and training at the same time?
So in regards to training, there's different approaches. You're absolutely right. Sometimes it's just like this. Everybody has to be on board and you knew, I don't care. We're just going to make it work. Right. Then I think it's even more important that you already, as a company, and that is really not like my expertise, but that's what I've seen from leaders that I work with, that you already have a program in place for training. Right.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
and yes, it might not be the ideal case that you jump right in, but there will be a point where you then have a little bit more time to actually go through that training, or ideally have like video trainings that they can do, you know, in the last hour of their work day or something like that. But as soon as you already have certain aspects or certain protocols in place, even when things get chaotic, you can kind of put the net under it and kind of catch it, you know. And I think
Right.
that's what's something that's really important. If you have companies, and I've seen that as well, especially with some of my clients who are transitioning from 9 to 5, from corporate to entrepreneurship, some of them simply do it because they're like, listen, they don't know what they're doing. There's no structure, there's nothing. And that's why we're losing good people, right? Because there's
That's true.
no company structure, there's no culture there. So I think on the leadership level, on the CEO level, that is something that has to be worked on to make sure we do have all the protocols in place to create a good work culture, that even when things are chaotic, we're still able to keep the good people.
Yes. And you triggered something from you when you said that you a little lever switch because I've seen so many organizations as well that will have this beautiful structure, these
Mhm.
protocols in place, and what to do for a, but nobody knows it.
Okay, that's a good one too. Yes.
Nobody knows it, so nobody can follow it, and then there's just chaos. And there's like,
Mhm.
well, we have this. Okay, well, how are we integrating this into
Yeah,
the culture so that it can actually be this beautiful utopia that you've mapped out,
yeah.
and things will work well? And
And that's
and so,
another thing. There's this often big discrepancy between knowledge and implementation,
mm,
right? You might be,
yes,
and that is also again a self reflection thing on the leadership level, to say, because I've seen leaders who are like, no, but we have all these things in place and I don't understand why nobody's following them. And then I ask, okay, so when did you last train people on it? Or when did you actually give them that handbook? Yeah, well,
right,
HR and, you know,
yeah,
so,
yes,
so that is something that we have to go a level higher then and keep leadership accountable and say, okay, it's amazing that you have all of this in place, but how are you making sure it's getting implemented?
right. Because a lot of times, some of these things are put in place because this grant requires it.
Mm-hmm.
This federal mandate, this state,
Yeah.
we need these dollars. So it looks really pretty in the
Mm-hmm.
computer or on the shelf or in the documents we talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
if people aren't utilizing them,
Yeah.
they are just a waste of time,
Mm.
space, and energy.
And I think that then we have to look, like, kind of flip the coin also and see what processes or procedures or programs do you have in place that are maybe completely unnecessary and
Ooh,
that are just creating more chaos than anything else, right? Because the
ah,
more streamlined we have it, the easier it is for everybody. If you
yes,
just throw handbook after handbook at people and say, this is everything we're going to do, you're going to overwhelm everybody. And
right.
50%, I mean, I worked not a long time, but I worked for people. You know, I worked in companies, and 50% of the time there were just things, it's like, this doesn't make sense at all. Like, why are we doing this? You know?
Okay. See, now you're going to make me confess. So I do that to myself. So
Hmm.
I have to constantly go back and look at unnecessary layers of complexity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, but when I create or whatever it is, it seems like okay, yes, it's completely unnecessary. And then when I go back and review and actually map it out, it's like, why am I doing this here? This is too
Yeah.
much. Let's,
Yeah.
and it feels so much better. And my monitor for that or my alarm for that is when I notice, oh, you're feeling a little stress.
Yeah.
Are there some redundancies that you can remove?
Hmm.
Now, Jennifer, have you personally experienced burnout or excessive chronic stress? And what practices do you do to prevent that, if so?
I had a few stages of my life where I really had burnout. The first time I came in contact with it was actually in my early 20s.
Mhm.
And so in Germany, you finish high school when you're around 19, 20 years old. And then you decide, do you want to do an apprenticeship or do you want to go study? And I was so focused on getting my grades up and getting my exams done that I didn't pay any attention to like what comes after. I was just like, let me get this done. And then I was done with school and my parents were like, so what's going to happen? I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. And then they kind of put me in that position. Okay, either you're going to do an apprenticeship or you're going to study. And I
Mhm.
was like, listen, people, I just went to school for 13 years. I'm not going to study. I'm done with learning for now. Like, I don't want to do it.
I want to
So,
live.
yeah. So it was like kind of this ad hoc decision of what am I good at? I'm good at math. Let me become a CPA. So I started that. And that
Wow.
is how I really noticed the first time really like this um, influence or that effect that stress can have on your body. Because about
Mm.
half a year in, I got horribly ill. Like I lost a lot of weight. I just didn't feel right. I had panic attacks. I was in the ER like plenty of times. And eventually they sent me to a psychotherapist and he was like, well, tell me everything about it. And then he looks at me and is like, do you like your job?
Ooh.
And I was like,
Oh, that's a loaded question.
and I was like, well, it's like kind of boring actually. And he was like, so when you think about doing this for the next 30, 40 years, and that's when like, a little bit of that bile came up and I was like, oh, Jesus. And that's when I really realized that job was making me sick. Not because
Mm.
it was a bad job, not it was a bad work environment. It was just not meant for me. So
Ah.
my body shut down because I didn't want to, because I was like, I need to finish, what I started and this has to happen. So my body shut it down. And that was really the first time where I came in contact with this concept of like, oh, there's actual physical consequences to chronic stress,
Mhm.
be it caused by whatever it is caused, right? And I quit my job, started studying, and it went away. Right? So that is one solution. But then later on, I think the second time that I really was confronted with burnout was when I started my first business in the US.
Okay.
When I got here, nobody really cared about my master's degree, but I did
Oh.
have some certificates in the fitness field. So I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'll be doing. So I started my own business as a personal fitness trainer. And a big mistake that I made very early on is that I didn't set boundaries. I was like, I
Mm.
need to get the money in. So I took every client that I could get. I worked at every hour of the day. I worked 7 days a week.
No.
And after, I want to say probably like a year, I was like, no, I can't do this. So I took half a year off. I was at the point where I was again, no, I'm not doing this. I have to find something else. But then I was like, okay, let me take actually a break from it and reassess. And I found out for me, okay, if I want to continue this, because I really enjoyed it, I enjoyed working
Right.
with people, I enjoyed the fitness aspect, then I need to set clear boundaries
Okay.
for myself and for my clients. So when I came back, I was like, okay, I'm going to be working 6 days a week. I'm going to be working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I'm going to have a cancellation policy. And if you don't
Mm.
show up, you're going to get charged for this session. And I don't care. And
Right.
I'm going to vet my clients better. If I have a feeling this is not a good fit, even if I do need the money, I will say, listen, I have another trainer that I think would be much better for you, that can get you much better results, and I would refer people out. And
Mm.
that is when my business from basically I was making zero because I didn't work anymore for half a year. And then in the first year, I made about $60,000, which was just a jump simply from setting boundaries.
Mm.
And I
Okay.
think that's a big thing that I see now with my clients when I do hypnosis, when I do one-on-one hypnosis sessions, that oftentimes there are no clear boundaries. They want to be there for everybody. They want to do everything, which is a noble cause, right? Which
Right.
is very nice. But you can't pour from,
Unsustainable,
yeah,
but noble.
yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to take a look at, okay, how can I support my team while at the same time support my mental well-being?
Mm.
And
So I'd love to delve into the use of hypnotism
Mhm.
and possibly dispel some myths around it. So I know that a lot of people probably think of, oh, I don't want her making me cluck like a chicken.
Yep.
What is it and why is it? Why did you feel like it was important?
So when we're talking about hypnosis, you're right. Most of the people think about stage hypnosis. That's how we call it, like this clocking like a chicken and make you do weird things. Right? This is usually what people think about when we're thinking about hypnosis. But
Right.
what hypnosis really is it allows you to access your subconscious mind.
Mm,
Usually in our day-to-day life, we're operating from a conscious level, meaning we have very limited access to almost 95% of the things that are actually going on in our mind because they're all running in the background. It's mostly patterns that we developed. And with hypnosis, we can not only bring those patterns to the surface, but we can also change them.
mm,
And that's why I personally love hypnosis as a tool because it gives you a better understanding of why you're doing the things you're doing. And we can just generate change in an instant where it usually takes like weeks or months because you're always on the surface level. And when you
okay.
go a level deeper, change can happen very quickly because we're going to the level where those patterns actually like reside, if you will, or where they were built, where they're running.
So, is there or someone or some experiences that would make you say, they're not a good fit for hypnosis, like, or I would be hesitant, like,
A good indicator is always when somebody comes to me and say, "You can't hypnotize me." And I say, "You are absolutely right." Because it is
okay.
not my job to convince you, right? It's your loss because you're basically not giving yourself the chance to access what is yours. Because what we as hypnotists, and that is another misconception, people always think we are the ones who are making the change. We go
Mm,
in there and we're just doing weird things and then you come out a changed person. But what we're actually doing is we are facilitating the change, meaning we give you the tools that you need to make the change yourself. And if you
okay.
don't want that in your life, that's okay. I'm not going to force you, you know?
So it's in like kind of like you all are the maid, no offense, you knock on the door and we say, no, I'm not letting you in.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
the house doesn't get cleaned, our mind doesn't get
Yeah.
cleaned, these patterns don't get cleaned up.
Yeah.
Uh, so one is just not being open and defensiveness or creating like a challenge. Is there
Mm,
anything else? Like, is there like if you found someone who had multiple complicated traumas, would you just
mm.
say, let's do some other preparatory work before
Right.
we do some hypnotism, or you would just bypass that?
So those things are areas where hypnosis still can work, right? For me personally, I find hypnosis always works best when you have one specific problem that you want to work on. And I always
Mm,
take fear of spiders as an example because it's like it's very simple, very straightforward. You have a fear of spiders, you don't want to have a fear of spiders. Or
right,
if you are a leader, you have to travel a lot for business or for work and you're afraid of flying, that's a problem, right?
right,
So
right.
you don't want to be afraid of flying anymore. If there's like a plethora of things going on, then you have to first see, okay, what are we actually talking about? And kind of maybe find the biggest domino. Like if we're tackling this one thing,
Right.
what will have a domino effect onto other things maybe that are just a part of it, right? Or
Hmm.
maybe not even related. In regards to trauma, what I and you will find different opinions from different hypnotists. I always say I'm not a social psychologist. I am a social psychologist. I'm not a psychotherapist, right? So I usually stay away from trauma because I feel that is something that really a therapist should be involved in. And you have nowadays a lot of therapists who are also hypnotherapists. So if hypnosis is something that you want to explore, I would usually suggest that route. Sometimes with trauma, it's just like just something that kind of explains the pattern that you're running.
Okay.
But it's not something that we necessarily have to solve. It's nice when we understand where it comes from, but it's not necessary to solve the problem. So in that case, I would still work with the client because I'm not working on the trauma. I'm working on the habit change.
Right.
So, but if somebody really has a trauma that they want to resolve, then I usually refer out and say, hey, why don't you go see a therapist? And that will help you.
Right. So I'm getting ready to ask you a weird question.
Sure. I've heard a lot of weird questions over the years, so go for it.
And what's the foundation for this question is partly when I think about workplace culture and teams and your social psychologist aspect. And I'm just really curious, is it possible to do hypnotism with a team?
Yeah.
Really? I'd love to hear about that.
So what I do self-hypnosis workshops, which is basically, so the specific one that I do is a full day workshop. It's like an 8-hour thing where I teach the clients or the participants how they can basically hypnotize themselves. So that's what I like to do when I have like a big group. Because again, everybody still works on different issues. So if you know the method and if you know how to do it, then you are able to work on your own problems. Another way to work with a group is then it goes a little bit more into like the meditation area, is that you just teach the group general stress management techniques, like how you can reduce stress by going into trance. Because what hypnosis also basically is, it's just another state that allows you to be more relaxed. Right? We have those different brain waves, and it just brings you into a brainwave state where your body and your mind is just much more relaxed. So that is something that you can teach in a group. That is not a problem at all.
Okay. So there's not a way for, say, for example, there is a problem with communication amongst the team, and there's just so that there couldn't be like a group hypnotism exercise for that. Is it because there's so many different problems within the communication?
Right. So I've done workshops like that, but then usually hypnosis is part of it. So it wouldn't be like, okay, there's this one exercise that we're going to do and now all your communication problems are solved, right?
Okay, good.
That would be amazing. And I don't know.
Right, you would never have time for a show. You'd never have time.
But maybe there's hypnotists out there who can do it. I don't know. I'm not I'm not to say, but there's definitely ways where we work again in workshops where we're talking about general communication, and then simply using hypnosis as a self-awareness tool, right? So that you can access your own language better, your own way to communicate, and then realize, oh, okay, when I say things in a certain way, it might sound much different in my head than it actually comes out, right? Or just different, learning different ways how to communicate in a group with teams amongst leaders. But then hypnosis is always just one of the tools that we're using during those workshops.
Right. So I think I must have likely went back to that stage concept of what.
Right.
It's like, yes, you just take us as a team, and then we'll have perfect
I mean, that
workplace
is something
culture.
for fun. That is something you could probably do. Just do like stage hypnosis and then have them all hug each other and love each other, and life is great. But that's
Oh,
probably not going to permanently solve the issue. So
okay, that's
that's
a
a
fleeting
fleeting
moment.
moment. Yeah.
Okay, outstanding. Uh, I'd love to hear about just some of your. Do you have some daily practices that you integrate for your wellness? Like, do you still use fitness as much as you did when you were, well, not as much. Do you still use fitness as a way to kind of address stress?
I think especially when we're talking about mental well-being, physical well-being always plays a big role because there is a mind-body connection, and that is scientifically proven. You can look at any study, they will all tell you, hey, if your gut health is not right, then your mind is not right. If your mind is not right, and so on, right? So for
Yes.
me personally, and I notice that I work out on a regular basis, and I notice if I don't work out for a few days, I'm not feeling as focused. I'm not as happy. I'm
Hmm.
probably not as pleasant to be around.
Right.
So that is physical fitness or just working out is always part of my routine. Healthy eating, like anti-inflammatory foods and things like that. And what I also started doing a few years ago, I started having trouble falling asleep. So what I do is I do kind of a self-hypnosis for sleep. And
Mm.
usually like I put myself into a trance and then from there I fall asleep so that I don't even wake up in between. It's just like this continuum. So that's usually what I do. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I So one of the things that I often share is for people who aren't very mobile and don't do a lot, but just need to excise some of that stress from their body,
Mm.
I'll encourage them to at least get like a stretchy band to
Yeah.
have in your desk and
Yeah.
just kind of take it and move around, use your feet or something, or
Mm.
just get up and walk to get something going. Because I feel like so many times that when people think of working out or physical activity, um, they have a lot of shame around it, like
Mm-hmm.
that they haven't been or that they can't do what they used to do,
Yeah.
or it feels so incredibly overwhelming, or
Mm.
they attribute the word I want to say that they
Yeah.
should know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what
And
are
it's,
some? Go, please go
yeah,
ahead.
I think it's always, we have to understand it's much more about consistency than intensity, right?
Oh,
You don't have to go to the gym twice a week and just give it your all and then be completely dead for the rest of the week. If you are currently not doing anything and you are going for a 10-15 minute walk in the mornings, that's great. That's progress, right? That's
mhm.
something that you're doing for your body. If you put one of those vibration plates under your desk and you turn it on a few times during the day and you're just sitting there, that counts, right? It's
Oh, that's
every,
doing something.
that is doing something. That shouldn't be the only thing that you're doing. Don't get me wrong. But that is something that you can do for your body and for your health. So every little step that you can take counts as a win. And I think we have to just give ourselves more credit because we always wait for the big win, for the big thing to happen before we celebrate. But every morning you get up and you do a little something. Maybe you're just doing 10 wall push-ups or whatever it is. You have done something for your health. So just like, give yourself a pat on the back and say, hey, this is amazing. And
Right.
especially when you do things like that first thing in the morning, you're kind of setting yourself up for success. Because there's also studies about that if you do something physical, if you do some workout, even if it's just short in the morning, you're much more likely to eat healthier, to move more during the day, to feel less stressed. So it just has like this ripple effect
Mm,
that kind of goes through your whole day.
okay. Okay. Uh, of those that you see that want to make change, do you notice a correlation between their level of stress, resolving stress, and physical activity?
Yes. Like the more physically, I mean, there is a point where it kind of, switches then, but usually in general, for the general population, the more you work out, the less stressed you are. Usually people who work out 5, 6 times a week, very few of them have anxiety, right? Or any kind of depression disorders or major stress things. It gets to a point where we're going into like the athlete field and stuff like that, where then the switch is, okay, you can actually overtrain and then it's excessive stress on your system, stuff like that. But general population, the more you work out, the more you take care of your body, the healthier your mind will be and the less stress you will experience. Or maybe not the less stress you experience, but the better you're able to cope with it.
Okay, okay. In your work and your capacity with leaders and workplaces, have you ever integrated like group fitness ideas or how they can create a program for their company?
I've never done corporate wellness per se as a single thing. I have done speeches on mental and physical wellness in or at the workplace. So that's what I usually do more as like a speech form.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have friends in the corporate wellness fields who are designing full programs, like over, like a 6-month program or whatever. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. I think every bigger company that can afford it should definitely have something like that in place.
Yes, and when I've seen it most of the time, it usually presents itself more so as a challenge, or let's see how many
Mm-hmm.
miles we can rack up. And
Yeah.
there's a game, somewhat of a gamification
Mm-hmm.
of the fitness, but I haven't seen one yet uh, that is just long term and just ongoing. Like, hey, this is what we do. This is what we do as a company, and we do it consistently and
Mm-hmm.
persistently. It's usually timed, but okay,
But I mean, you
absolutely.
also have, when you look at some of the bigger companies, they have gyms there. And some even say, hey,
Yes.
listen, part of your work day is a half-hour workout. Like, we actually going to pay you for going to the gym, but we expect you to go to the
Hmm.
gym. That is
Right.
just part of your day, as running your meetings, as briefing your team. And I think that is amazing. If you as a company can implement something like that, you will have, like, and that is quantifiable. You can see that there's fewer sick days, that people are healthier, that people are happier at the workplace. And if you have
Right.
happy people, you're going to keep them. you know
Right.
you lose people when they're not happy anymore and when they're just stressed out.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on blending work and exercise? And before you answer that, I'll share share one of my thoughts, because I don't like to multitask when
Hmm.
I am working out or even going on a walk. Like, it's like, there's my phone. Don't call me. I'm not thinking about work. I focus on visual things,
Hmm.
or I don't want to blend that. I feel like I'm violating that space for me to clear my mind mentally and
Hmm.
physically and exercise that stress. So I'm curious how you view that multitasking when you're working out.
And it's funny because I actually talked to one of my clients about that like a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's a very individual thing,
Mm,
because I personally, I'm like you, I can't even do two of those. Like, I can't be on my stationary bicycle and read a book at the same time. It's just not happening. My brain does not comprehend that. And you have other people who do their meetings while they're going for a walk, and or
yes.
they have like their little treadmills under the desk and stuff like that, and it works very well for them. Like, what I find, the only time I personally can kind of multitask and where it's actually beneficial for me is when it's a creative endeavor. Like when I have a creative
Mm,
question that I want to solve and I go for a walk, because that kind of clears the mind, just like when you're taking a shower, right? The best ideas always come in the shower. that's when it works out. But if I actually have to talk to people, like I couldn't do, like I have some of my own coaches that coach me, because every coach should have a coach. They are on their bicycle or something while we have the coaching call. And I'm like, I could not focus on my client while I'm doing that, but they're amazing at it.
Right.
So
Well, that would distract me. Like if and be like, can you stop that?
yeah,
I'd hear
I've
what
kind
it.
of gotten used to it.
You're good. You're good. I think I'm learning that I just love to focus on what I'm doing
Yeah,
and not have
same here.
these multiple things going on.
Yeah,
And the truth is that sometimes people's belief and how efficient they are when they're multitasking, a lot of times they're just half-assed doing two things.
yeah, yeah.
Who said that?
It's true. It's true.
Even
I,
though they intend to do better. So I'd love to hear, Jennifer,
mhm.
is there anything that you would like to issue as a challenge for our viewers to either integrate in their lives or their workplace or both to make some type of improvement based upon your expertise?
What I always recommend to clients who are really not doing any kind of self-care or mindfulness exercises is take at least 10 minutes in the morning for yourself. I don't care what you're doing. You can just take your coffee and sit outside. It doesn't have to be journaling. It doesn't have to be meditation. It doesn't have to be any formal practice, but take 10 minutes for yourself in the morning, because that is how you set up your day. If you're one of those who like gets up after the alarm went off like the fifth time and grabs the coffee on the way out, you're going to be stressed from the start. And that's going to be the story of your life, because that's always going to go throughout your day. But if you take those 10 minutes with intention and say, this is just for me, and then maybe even make a plan for the day, see what's going on, that you have a game plan, but really just taking that time as self-care makes a world of a difference. And a lot of people always say, yeah, I know that. But are you actually doing it?
Mm.
Because I guarantee you're not. Because if you did, we wouldn't have this conversation, right?
I absolutely adore that prescription, that challenge, and I'll tell you why. I feel like people get such a sense of failure when we say this, the self-care,
Mhm.
because it's usually do this activity, do this thing,
Mm.
and like sometimes I don't feel like doing that today.
Right.
But when you say take 10 minutes, like that could be a variety of
Yeah.
things based upon like how you are feeling or what you need that day. So
Yeah. What makes you feel good right now? What can you do in 10 minutes that just makes you happy, that sets up a good tone for the day? That's all it is.
ah, Jennifer, I appreciate all the wisdom that you've shared today, all the tips, and just helping us to get a better understanding of how we navigate ourselves and how that can impact others. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share before we leave?
Again, the more self-aware you are, the better you'll be able to navigate your workplace, navigate your life. So don't be scared of digging a little bit deeper and finding out how you actually tick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in today to Leadership Beyond Burnout. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. Be sure to tune in with us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and 2 p.m. Pacific. Until next time.